The dust cloud announced the arrival of another stagecoach long before it rolled into Sweetwater Creek. Felicity Blackwell shielded her eyes against the setting sun, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear in equal measure. This desolate frontier town in Wyoming Territory would be her home, now her last chance at a respectable life, after the scandal that had driven her from Boston in the spring of 1875. The stagecoach lurched to a halt, and Felicity gathered her worn carpetbag, the meager remains of a once privileged life. At 22, she had expected to be married with children by now, not starting over in a town where no one knew her name or the shame that followed it. "End of the line, miss," the driver called, not bothering to help her down. Her boots touched the packed dirt of Sweetwater Creek's main street for the first time. The town was smaller than she'd imagined from her cousin's letters, just a single dusty street lined with weathered buildings. A saloon dominated one end, its raucous piano music spilling into the evening air, while a general store, blacksmith, and a few other establishments completed the modest settlement. "Excuse me," she approached an older woman sweeping the boardwalk. "Could you direct me to Mrs. Abigail Harper's boarding house?" The woman looked her up and down, taking in Felicity's travel-worn dress and exhausted appearance. "End of the street, blue house with the white trim. Though, if you're looking for work, I should warn you she's particular about the women she takes in." "I have a room arranged, thank you," Felicity replied, straightening her spine despite her fatigue. Her cousin had secured her lodging, but beyond that, Felicity would have to make her own way. The boarding house appeared well kept, a two-story structure with curtained windows and a small porch adorned with potted plants, signs of a woman's touch rare in this frontier town. Felicity knocked, smoothing her skirts and tucking a stray curl back into her simple chignon. Mrs. Harper proved to be a stern-faced widow of about 50, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Blackwell, I presume? Your cousin wrote that you'd be arriving today." "Yes, madam. Thank you for holding the room." "Room and board is $2 a week, paid in advance. No gentlemen callers, no liquor, and curfew is 9 o'clock sharp." The woman's tone left no room for negotiation. "Your cousin mentioned you're seeking employment?" "Yes, I taught school back east, but I'm willing to take any respectable position." Mrs. Harper's expression softened slightly. "The town could use a school teacher, but the council won't meet until next month to consider it. In the meantime, you'll need something to tide you over." After showing Felicity to a small but clean room under the eaves, Mrs. Harper left her to unpack her meager belongings. Felicity sat heavily on the narrow bed, allowing herself a moment of doubt. The journey had depleted most of her savings. If she couldn't find work quickly, she would be destitute within weeks. Morning came with the crowing of roosters and the scent of coffee drifting up from the kitchen below. Felicity dressed in her best remaining dress, a blue calico that had seen better days, but still held its shape, and pinned her rich brown hair into a modest style. Her green eyes, once described by a suitor as bewitching, now looked back at her from the small mirror with determination. Breakfast was a silent affair with the house's other boarders, 2 shopkeepers and an elderly widow who regarded the newcomer with curiosity but little warmth. Mrs. Harper slid a piece of paper across the table to Felicity as the meal concluded. "I've made a list of folks who might need help. The mercantile sometimes needs a shop girl, and the hotel is often looking for a laundress." Felicity's heart sank at the mention of laundress. Such work would ruin her hands, and likely any chance of returning to teaching, but she nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. I'll start right away." The morning proved discouraging. The mercantile had just taken on the owner's niece, and the hotel only needed someone to scrub floors twice weekly, not enough to pay her board. By midday, Felicity had been turned away from 5 establishments, each time with increasingly forced politeness. She paused outside the Lucky Strike saloon, considering her dwindling options. She knew what work women found in such establishments, and despite her desperate circumstances, she couldn't bring herself to step through those swinging doors. Not yet, at least. As she turned away, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of cowboys had ridden into town, their horses kicking up dust as they dismounted in front of the livery stable. They were a rough-looking bunch, sun-bronzed and trail-worn, but one figure stood out among them. He was taller than the others, with broad shoulders and a stride that spoke of confidence without arrogance. Unlike his companions who headed straight for the saloon, this man walked toward the general store, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. Something in his bearing made Felicity pause. Before she could look away, he glanced in her direction, and for a moment their eyes met. His were a startling blue, the color of the sky after a storm, and they widened slightly at the sight of her. Embarrassed to be caught staring, Felicity quickly looked down and hurried past. She spent the afternoon inquiring at every business in town, finally securing a promise from the hotel owner that she could come 3 mornings a week to do laundry backbreaking work for pitiful pay, but better than nothing. As she walked back to the boarding house, the weight of her new reality settled heavily upon her shoulders. Miss, wait up. Felicity turned to find a boy of about 12 running toward her, his face flushed with exertion. Are you the lady looking for work? The one staying at Mrs. Harper's? Yes, I am, she replied, curiosity piqued. Mr. Forrester wants to know if you'd come by his ranch tomorrow. Says he might have something for you. The boy thrust a folded note into her hand. It's just 3 miles north of town. I can take you if you want. Mr. Forrester? The name meant nothing to her. Luke Forrester, owns the Double F Ranch. He's a good man, pays fair and on time. The boy seemed eager to convince her. Not like some of the other ranchers. Felicity unfolded the note. The handwriting was surprisingly neat for a rancher. Miss Blackwell. I understand you are seeking employment. I may have a position that would suit a woman of education. If interested, please call at the Double F tomorrow morning. Transportation will be provided. Respectfully, Lucas Forrester. How did Mr. Forrester know I was looking for work? She asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. The boy shrugged. Everybody knows everything in Sweetwater Creek. Will you come? Felicity hesitated. A single woman going alone to a stranger's ranch invited gossip at best and danger at worst. Yet the note mentioned her education. Perhaps he needed a tutor for children. Please tell Mr. Forrester I'll consider his offer, she said finally. If I decide to come, I'll be ready at 8 tomorrow. That evening at dinner, Felicity casually mentioned the note to Mrs. Harper, seeking any information about this mysterious rancher. Luke Forrester? Mrs. Harper looked surprised. Well, he's respectable enough. One of the more successful cattle operations in the county. Keeps to himself mostly, but fair in his dealings. She narrowed her eyes. What sort of position is he offering? The note didn't specify, Felicity admitted. Would it be improper for me to inquire? The older woman considered this. Ordinarily, I'd say yes, but Forrester isn't known for impropriety. His foreman's wife passed last winter. Perhaps he needs help with household matters. She added firmly, take the morning stage. It passes his ranch. That way, you'll arrive in a proper manner. Sleep came fitfully that night as Felicity weighed her options. By morning, she had decided that a respectable position at a ranch, whatever it might entail, was preferable to scrubbing hotel floors or eventually being forced to seek work at the saloon. The stagecoach driver seemed unsurprised by her request to stop at the Double F, letting her down at a well-maintained gate bearing the ranch's brand. A path led to a substantial 2-story house surrounded by cottonwood trees, an oasis of civilization in the rugged landscape. As she approached, the front door opened, and Felicity found herself face to face with the tall cowboy she had noticed in town. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, evidence of years squinting against the sun, and the strong set of his jaw, softened somewhat by a courteous expression. Miss Blackwell, I'm Luke Forrester. Thank you for coming. His voice was deep but gentle, with none of the rough edge she'd expected from a man who worked cattle. Mr. Forrester. She nodded, suddenly conscious of her plain dress and worn gloves. Your note mentioned a position? Yes. Please come in. He held the door, maintaining a respectful distance as she entered. The house's interior surprised her. While not luxurious, it was well appointed with solid furniture, colorful rugs, and bookshelves lining one wall of the sitting room. It spoke of taste and modest prosperity rather than bachelor austerity. My sister furnished it before returning east, he explained, noticing her appraisal. Coffee? Yes, thank you. He gestured for her to sit while he disappeared briefly, returning with a tray bearing a coffee pot and cups. Felicity noted with interest that he served her himself rather than summoning a servant. I understand you were a teacher in the East, he began, taking a seat across from her. Yes, in Boston, for 3 years. She kept her answer brief, wary of questions that might lead to her reasons for leaving. And you have experience running a household? I managed my father's home after my mother passed until... She trailed off, then straightened. Yes, I'm familiar with household management. Luke nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. I find myself in need of help, Miss Blackwell. This house has lacked a woman's touch since my sister left 2 years ago. I have a housekeeper who comes twice weekly from town, but the place needs more regular attention. You're offering me a position as housekeeper, Felicity clarified, uncertain whether to be relieved or disappointed. More than that. He set down his cup. I need someone to bring order to this place, someone educated who can manage correspondence, keep accounts, and yes, ensure the household runs smoothly. A ranch this size generates considerable paperwork, and I'd rather be working cattle than sitting at a desk. Felicity's pulse quickened. This was far better than anything she had dared hope for. And accommodations? There's a small but comfortable room adjoining the kitchen. You would take your meals with me when I'm not out with the herd, though I should warn you I keep irregular hours during calving season. His blue eyes studied her carefully. The position comes with room, board, and $20 a month, more than fair wages, I believe. It was indeed generous, more than she would make teaching if the position ever materialized. Yet living under the same roof as a single man would raise eyebrows. Mr. Forrester, while your offer is most kind, I must consider my reputation, a single woman living in a bachelor's home. He nodded, unsurprised by her concern. I anticipated that. Mrs. Delaney, my foreman's widow, still lives in the married hands quarters. She would be happy to chaperone, and her presence would quiet any gossip. Additionally, I'm often away for days at a time when we move the herds. Felicity considered his words. The position offered security, respectable work, and wages that would allow her to save. If there was a proper chaperone, perhaps the arrangement could work. May I ask, Mr. Forrester, why me? Surely there are women in town with more experience who would welcome such a position. A faint smile touched his lips. I need someone who can read and write well, who has the education to manage business affairs, and who isn't afraid of hard work. Mrs. Harper speaks highly of you, and I trust her judgment. So, the boarding house keeper had been involved. Felicity wasn't sure whether to feel manipulated or grateful. Could I see the accommodations before making my decision? Of course. He showed her through the house a well-appointed dining room, a study filled with books and maps, a kitchen with a modern stove, and finally, the room that would be hers. It was small but pleasant, with a single window overlooking a kitchen garden, a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small writing desk. The housekeeper has kept it clean, but it could use a woman's touch, he said, lingering in the doorway while she inspected the space. Felicity ran her fingers over the desk, mind working quickly. The position was unexpected, but promising far better than scrubbing floors or washing linens. And yet, something about the situation felt too convenient, too perfectly arranged. Mr. Forrester, forgive my directness, but I must ask, what precisely are your expectations of me in this role? His expression remained steady, but she noticed a slight tensing of his jaw. I expect diligence, honesty, and discretion in managing my household and business affairs. Nothing more, Miss Blackwell. She held his gaze, searching for any hint of duplicity, but found only forthright sincerity in those blue eyes. I would need 1 day off each week, she said finally. And I would prefer to return to town for Sunday services. Agreed. He extended his hand. Shall we consider it settled then? Felicity hesitated only a moment before shaking his hand. His palm was calloused but warm, his grip firm without being intimidating. When would you like me to begin? Is tomorrow too soon? I can send a wagon for your things. Tomorrow will be fine, Mr. Forrester. As he escorted her back to the waiting stagecoach, Felicity felt a curious mixture of trepidation and excitement. For better or worse, her life in the West was truly beginning. True to his word, Luke sent a wagon the following morning. Mrs. Harper seemed unsurprised by Felicity's news, confirming her suspicion that the boarding house keeper had indeed had a hand in the arrangement. Luke Forrester is one of the few decent men in this territory, Mrs. Harper said, as Felicity packed her belongings. Mind you keep it professional. A man like that won't stay unmarried forever, and you don't want rumors complicating your position. I assure you, Mrs. Harper, I have no intentions beyond fulfilling my duties as his household manager, Felicity replied, perhaps too emphatically. The older woman's knowing look followed her down to the waiting wagon. The driver introduced himself as Hank, the ranch foreman, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Boss says you're going to bring some civilization back to the place, he said as they set off. About time, if you ask me. Been looking like a bear's den since Miss Catherine went back east. During the short journey, Hank provided a running commentary on the ranch 2,000 acres, 300 head of cattle, 8 hired hands, and the best water rights in the county. Luke Forrester, she gathered, was not merely a successful rancher, but a respected figure in the territory. Built it all himself, he did, Hank said with evident pride. Came out here with nothing but $100 and a good horse 10 years ago. Now look at it. The ranch appeared even more impressive in daylight. Beyond the main house stood a complex of outbuildings, a bunkhouse for the hands, a cook shack, stables, and various barns and sheds. Men were at work everywhere, moving with purpose under the bright Wyoming sky. Mrs. Delaney met her at the door, a plump, motherly woman in her 50s with graying hair and a welcoming smile. "So, you're the Boston girl," she said, enveloping Felicity in an unexpected hug. "Lord knows this place needs a woman's touch. Mr. Forrester's a good man, but blind as a bat when it comes to keeping a proper home." She helped Felicity settle into her room, chattering all the while about the ranch, its routines, and its master. "He works harder than any 2 men," she confided. "Up before dawn, often not back till after dark. Drives himself something fierce." "Has he always lived alone?" Felicity asked, trying to sound merely conversational as she unpacked her few dresses. Mrs. Delaney's expression sobered. "There was a young lady once, about 5 years back, from Denver. They were engaged to be married." She lowered her voice. "Consumption took her before the wedding. He doesn't speak of it." Felicity absorbed this information silently. It explained something of the seriousness she'd sensed in him, the air of solitude that seemed to surround him, despite his courteous manner. Luke himself was absent, out checking the north pasture according to Mrs. Delaney, and wouldn't return until evening. This gave Felicity time to familiarize herself with the house and its workings. She spent the afternoon taking inventory of supplies, inspecting linens, and reviewing the household accounts that Luke had left in the study. The ledgers revealed a methodical mind, each expenditure carefully noted, each calculation precise. Yet they also showed a certain neglect of the house itself. The majority of funds went to ranch operations, with minimal attention to domestic comforts. As the afternoon waned, Felicity took it upon herself to prepare dinner, working alongside Mrs. Delaney, who seemed delighted to have help in the kitchen. Together, they produced a simple but hearty meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread. "Mr. Forrester usually eats whatever's put in front of him without comment," Mrs. Delaney warned. "Don't take it as criticism. He's just not one for unnecessary words." Luke returned as the sun was setting, bringing with him the sense of horse, leather, and open air. He paused in the kitchen doorway, hat in hand, seemingly surprised to find the table set and dinner waiting. "Miss Blackwell? You've settled in." It wasn't quite a question. "Yes, thank you. I hope you don't mind that I've taken the liberty of preparing dinner." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Not at all. It's been a while since this kitchen saw regular use." Dinner was indeed a quiet affair, but not uncomfortably so. Luke ate with the focused efficiency of a man accustomed to regarding meals as necessary fuel rather than social occasions. Still, he answered Felicity's occasional questions about the ranch with patience, even offering brief explanations of the cattle business when she inquired. "Tomorrow I'll show you the office and explain what I need regarding correspondence and accounts," he said as the meal concluded. "For now, is there anything you require to make your quarters comfortable?" "Everything is satisfactory, thank you," Felicity replied, though in truth she had noted several deficiencies in the household's linens and kitchenware. He nodded, rising from the table. "Then I'll bid you good night, Miss Blackwell. I rise early, but please adjust your schedule as needed these first few days." After he had gone, Mrs. Delaney helped Felicity clear the table. "He seems pleased," the older woman whispered conspirationally. "I haven't seen him take seconds at dinner in months." The following days fell into a rhythm. Felicity rose early, preparing breakfast before Luke went out to the ranch. Mornings were spent on household tasks, directing the cleaning, planning meals, and organizing supplies. Afternoons found her in the study, managing correspondence, updating ledgers, and gradually bringing order to the ranch's paperwork. Luke was true to his word about being away much of the time. He left before dawn most days and often returned after Felicity had retired to her room. Yet she found evidence of his presence in muddy boots by the door, a coffee cup left in the study, or fresh firewood stacked beside the hearth. On the rare evenings when he was home for dinner, their conversations gradually lengthened. Luke, she discovered, was well read despite his lack of formal education. He subscribed to newspapers from Denver and Chicago, maintained a substantial library, and held thoughtful opinions on everything from territorial politics to literature. "You seem surprised," he commented one evening, catching her expression when he referenced Shakespeare. "I shouldn't be," she admitted. "Your library suggests a man of broad interests. I just didn't expect a simple cowboy to quote Hamlet." There was no offense in his tone, only mild amusement. "I didn't mean. No need to apologize, Miss Blackwell. Most cattle ranchers aren't known for their literary knowledge. My sister insisted I educate myself if I was to succeed out here. She sent books with every letter." "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She is. Catherine sacrificed much to help me establish this place. Came out here when it was nothing but a shack and a dream, kept house and taught school in town until I could afford hired hands." His expression softened with affection. "She deserves the comfort she has now, back in Philadelphia with her husband." As weeks passed, Felicity found herself increasingly comfortable at the Double F. The work was demanding but satisfying, allowing her to use both her practical skills and her education. Mrs. Delaney proved a cheerful companion, filling Felicity's ears with local gossip and ranch history during their shared tasks. The hands treated her with respect, tipping their hats when she crossed the yard, and making efforts to clean their boots before entering the house on the rare occasions Luke called them in for meetings. Even Hank's gruff manner softened toward her after she mended his favorite shirt and added extra sugar to his coffee without being asked. Most surprising was her evolving relationship with Luke himself. What had begun as a formal employer-employee dynamic gradually relaxed into something approaching friendship. He began to seek her opinion on ranch matters, valuing her practical suggestions and careful accounting. In turn, she found herself admiring his quiet competence, his fair treatment of his men, and his unwavering work ethic. One evening in late summer, Felicity was scrubbing the kitchen floor, a task she normally delegated to the twice-weekly house cleaner. But the woman had fallen ill when Luke returned unexpectedly early. She was on her hands and knees, sleeves rolled up and hair coming loose from its pins, when his shadow fell across the wet floorboards. "Miss Blackwell?" Surprise colored his voice. "What are you doing?" Felicity looked up, embarrassed to be caught in such an undignified position. "Mrs. Collins couldn't come today. The floor needed attention." Luke frowned, crossing the room in 2 strides and reaching down to take her arm. Before she could protest, he had lifted her to her feet, his hands firm but gentle on her elbows. "You belong beside me, not scrubbing my floors," he said, his voice low and intense. "I hired you to manage this household, not to do the work of a scullery maid." Felicity's heart hammered in her chest, acutely aware of his nearness and the strange emotion in his eyes. "It's just a floor, Mr. Forrester. I'm not above honest work." "That's not—" He stopped, releasing her arms and stepping back. "Forgive me, I spoke hastily. Of course no work is beneath any of us. But I would not have you exhaust yourself with tasks that others can perform." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Felicity dared not name. Then Luke cleared his throat and retreated another step. "I came to inform you that I must ride to Cheyenne tomorrow on business. I'll be gone for several days." "I see." Felicity smoothed her apron, trying to regain her composure. "Shall I prepare documents for the cattle sale?" "Please. And if you could draft a letter to the Eastern investors we discussed, I would appreciate it." His manner had returned to its usual businesslike efficiency, yet something in his eyes remained different, warmer, perhaps, or more guarded. "Of course. Will you dine at home this evening?" "Yes, if it's not too much trouble." "Never trouble, Mr. Forrester." She offered a small smile, which he returned before excusing himself. Alone in the kitchen, Felicity pressed a damp hand to her flushed cheek. "You belong beside me." The words echoed in her mind, stirring feelings she had firmly suppressed since arriving at the Double F. Luke Forrester was her employer, nothing more. To imagine otherwise was both foolish and potentially disastrous. Yet, as she prepared dinner that evening, she found herself taking extra care with the meal, selecting his favorite dishes and using the good china that normally stayed in the cupboard. If Mrs. Delaney noticed, she made no comment beyond a knowing smile. Luke departed for Cheyenne at dawn the next day, leaving the ranch in Hank's capable hands. Felicity threw herself into work, determined to banish the confusion their encounter had stirred. She reorganized the pantry, updated all the accounts, and even began a detailed inventory of ranch equipment at Hank's request. 3 days passed without word from Luke, then 5. Felicity told herself there was no reason for concern. Business in Cheyenne often took time, and the telegraph office in Sweetwater Creek was notoriously unreliable. Still, she found herself watching the road each afternoon, hoping to see his familiar figure on horseback. On the 6th day, as she was hanging laundry in the yard, Hank approached with an unusually grave expression. "Miss Blackwell, there's a telegram from Cheyenne." He handed her a folded paper. "For you specifically." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "Miss Blackwell, stop accident in Cheyenne. Stop Forrester injured. Stop requesting your presence. Stop. Dr. Wilson General Hospital. Stop." "How bad is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hank shook his head. "Telegram doesn't say. I'll hitch the wagon and take you to catch the afternoon stage." "Thank you, Hank. I'll pack immediately." Mrs. Delaney helped her prepare, insisting she take food for the journey and Luke's heavy coat in case the weather turned. "Don't you worry about things here," the older woman assured her. "We'll keep everything running until you both return." The journey to Cheyenne felt interminable. The stagecoach was crowded and uncomfortable, the roads rough from recent rains. Felicity spent the hours staring out the window, mind racing with terrible possibilities. What kind of accident? How severely was he injured? And why had he asked for her specifically? She reached Cheyenne near midnight, exhausted and anxious. The hospital was a 2-story brick building near the center of town, its windows glowing with lamplight despite the late hour. A tired-looking nurse directed her to a room on the 2nd floor after she identified herself. "He's been asking for you," the nurse said. "Stubborn man wouldn't rest properly until we sent that telegram." Felicity paused outside the door, gathering her courage before knocking softly. "Come in." Luke's voice sounded weaker than usual, but alert. She entered to find him propped up in bed, his left arm in a sling and a bandage around his head. Despite the injuries, relief flooded through her at the sight of him conscious and apparently not at death's door. "Miss Blackwell?" His face brightened visibly. "You came." "Of course I came. Your telegram was rather alarming." She moved to his bedside, resisting the urge to take his hand. "What happened?" "Runaway wagon on the main street. Horse spooked at a newspaper blowing across the road." He grimaced. "I pulled a child out of its path but couldn't clear it myself. Broke my arm and took a knock to the head." "The child?" "Unharmed, thankfully." He attempted a smile that turned into a wince. "The doctor says I'm lucky it wasn't worse." Felicity sank into the chair beside the bed, the fear and tension of the journey suddenly giving way to exhaustion. "You might have included in your telegram that you weren't dying, Mr. Forrester. I've imagined the worst these past 2 days." His good hand reached for hers, hesitated, then completed the gesture, covering her fingers with his. "I'm sorry for worrying you. I just needed to see a friendly face." The simple admission, more than anything else, revealed his vulnerability. In that moment, he wasn't the capable rancher or her employer, but simply a man, lonely, in pain, and reaching out for comfort. "Well, you've seen it now," she said, attempting lightness despite the lump in her throat. And very tired it looks too, I imagine. He didn't smile as expected. Instead, his blue eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Beautiful, actually. The most welcome sight I could imagine. Felicity felt heat rise to her cheeks. Mr. Forrester, you must have hit your head harder than the doctor realized. Luke, he corrected. After you've traveled all this way because of my foolishness, I think you might call me Luke. Luke, she repeated softly, aware that some invisible boundary between them had just been crossed. And I'm Felicity. He nodded, still holding her hand. Felicity. It suits you. A nurse appeared in the doorway, frowning at the late-hour visitor. Sir, you need rest. The lady can return in the morning. Reluctantly, Felicity withdrew her hand and stood. I'll find a hotel for the night. Is there anything you need before I go? Just your promise to return tomorrow, Luke said, his eyelids already growing heavy with fatigue and medication. I promise. The following days established a new pattern. Felicity spent mornings at the hospital, helping Luke with correspondence and business matters he had been in Cheyenne to address. Afternoons, when he rested, she explored the territorial capital, marveling at its relative sophistication after months in Sweetwater Creek. The doctor declared Luke well enough to travel after a week, though he insisted the patient avoid horseback riding for at least another month. They would return by stagecoach, a prospect Luke grumbled about but ultimately accepted. I've arranged a private coach, he told Felicity the evening before their departure, more comfortable for the journey, and we can stop as needed. She nodded, recognizing the consideration behind the arrangement, though her practical nature wondered at the expense. Since arriving in Cheyenne, Luke had shown a generosity that went beyond their professional relationship, insisting on paying for her hotel room, arranging for meals to be sent up, even having a local dressmaker deliver several ready-made gowns when she mentioned having packed only one change of clothes. You needn't go to such trouble on my account, she protested when he presented her with a new traveling cloak the morning of their departure. It's no trouble, he replied simply, and you'll need it on the journey. September brings cold winds through the passes. The private coach proved to be a wise decision. The first day of travel passed comfortably enough, but by the second morning, Luke was clearly in pain, though he tried to hide it. Felicity insisted they stop more frequently, using the time to walk and stretch while she discreetly slipped him the pain powders the doctor had provided. You're a poor patient, she observed as they stopped for lunch at a way station. I dread to think how you'd manage this journey alone. I wouldn't, he admitted, relaxing slightly as the medicine took effect. I'd have pushed through and been the worse for it. You've made me more reasonable, Felicity. There was something in his tone of fondness that went beyond gratitude that made her heart flutter. Over the past weeks, she had become increasingly aware of her feelings for Luke. What had begun as respect had deepened into admiration, and now she found herself thinking of him constantly, noticing small details like the way sunlight caught in his hair, or the subtle changes in his expression when he was amused but trying not to show it. Such feelings were dangerous. She was his employee, dependent on his goodwill for her livelihood. Moreover, her position at the ranch depended on propriety and respect. If anyone suspected she harbored romantic feelings for her employer, her reputation would be compromised, and with it, the security she had worked so hard to establish. Yet, as they traveled together, sharing meals and conversation, watching landscapes pass and stopping at small towns along the way, Felicity found it increasingly difficult to maintain professional distance. Luke, too, seemed to have shed some of his reserve. He spoke more freely of his past, his hopes for the ranch's future, and even, obliquely, of his loneliness before her arrival. The house was just a place to sleep, he said, as they neared Sweetwater Creek on the third day. Now it feels like a home again. Felicity looked out the window, afraid her expression might reveal too much. I'm glad I've been able to make it comfortable for you. It's not the arrangements or the meals, though those are welcome improvements. His voice dropped slightly. It's your presence, Felicity. You've brought life back to the place. To me as well, I think. She turned to find him watching her, his blue eyes serious. Luke! The coach lurched suddenly as the driver called out a warning. Luke instinctively reached out with his good arm, steadying Felicity as she was thrown forward. What is it? She called through the window. "Wash out ahead, madam," the driver shouted back. "Recent rain's taken out part of the road. We'll have to find another way around." Luke frowned. "We're still a good 10 miles from town. If we have to detour, we might not make it before dark." The driver confirmed this assessment after examining the damage to the road. "There's a homestead about 2 miles back," he suggested. "Widow Johnson's place. She sometimes takes in travelers. Might be best to stop there for the night and continue in the morning when we can see the trail better." Luke looked to Felicity. "What do you think? I don't want to push on if it's not safe, but I don't wish to impose on you either." The concern in his voice touched her. Even now, injured and tired, he was thinking of her comfort. "Let's stop at the widow's," she decided. "Better safe than sorry." Widow Johnson proved to be a brisk, practical woman in her 60s who seemed delighted at the prospect of company. Her small but neat cabin had a spare room, which she offered to Felicity, while Luke would sleep on a pallet in the main room. "Terrible timing with that arm of yours, Mr. Forrester," she clucked as she prepared a simple dinner. "Cattle drive season's almost upon us." "Hank can manage," Luke replied, though Felicity noted the tension in his shoulders. The fall roundup was indeed approaching a critical time for the ranch when cattle were gathered, counted, and prepared for market. After dinner, Widow Johnson excused herself to visit a neighbor, leaving Luke and Felicity alone by the fire. For a time, they sat in comfortable silence, Felicity mending a tear in her sleeve, while Luke stared thoughtfully into the flames. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about the future of the ranch." Felicity looked up from her sewing. "Oh, it's grown beyond what one man can oversee, even with good hands like Hank." He shifted in his chair, wincing slightly as he adjusted his injured arm. "This accident has made me realize how precarious everything is. If something happened to me—" "Nothing will happen," Felicity interrupted, alarmed by the direction of his thoughts. He smiled faintly. "Nevertheless, I need to consider contingencies. The ranch needs more permanent management, someone who shares my vision for its future." "Are you considering taking on a partner?" She tried to keep her voice neutral, though the prospect of another person at the ranch, perhaps someone who might not value her services, sent a ripple of anxiety through her. In a manner of speaking, Luke's gaze remained on the fire. "I've been alone a long time, Felicity. Too long, perhaps. A man builds differently when he builds only for himself." She set her sewing aside, uncertain where the conversation was leading, but acutely aware of the sudden tension in the room. "What are you saying, Luke?" He turned to her then, his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "I'm saying that I find myself thinking of more than cattle and water rights these days. I think of meals shared and conversations by lamplight. I think of a woman's voice bringing music back into a silent house." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "I think of you, Felicity. Far more than is proper for an employer." Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Luke, please, let me finish." He leaned forward, earnest now. "I know this is sudden, and perhaps unwelcome. You came to the ranch seeking employment, not complications. But these weeks, especially our time in Cheyenne, have shown me what my life could be with you in it. Not as my housekeeper or accounts manager, but as my partner, my wife." Felicity sat perfectly still, scarcely breathing. Had he truly just proposed marriage? Her mind raced with conflicting emotions: joy, fear, hope, doubt. "You needn't answer now," Luke continued, misinterpreting her silence. "Take time to consider. I know I'm asking a great deal, and my circumstances are hardly what a woman of your background might expect. But I promise you, this you would never want for anything I could provide, and I would spend my life ensuring you never regretted your choice." "Luke," she found her voice at last, "your circumstances are not the issue. You've built something remarkable at the Double F. Any woman would be proud to share in it." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Then what is the issue?" Felicity took a deep breath. The moment had come to reveal what she had kept hidden since arriving in Sweetwater Creek. "You know nothing of my past, why I left Boston, what drove me west." "I know you," he said simply. "Whatever came before, it made you the woman you are now. That's enough for me." Tears pricked at her eyes, his faith in her both beautiful and painful. "It may not be enough when you know the truth. I was engaged, Luke, to a man of good family and better prospects. When When he proved false, the scandal was considerable. Luke's expression didn't change. He betrayed you? With my closest friend. The words still tasted bitter, even now. When I discovered them, I confronted him. He claimed I had driven him to it with my schoolmarmish ways and excessive opinions. Perhaps he was right. I was never the kind of woman who— "He was a fool," Luke interrupted, anger flashing in his eyes. "A damn fool who didn't deserve you." His vehemence startled her. The disgrace followed me nonetheless. My teaching position became untenable. My father, ashamed of the gossip, suggested I visit my cousin in the West, permanently. "And so you came to Sweetwater Creek?" She nodded. "A fallen woman, by Boston standards." Luke rose from his chair, moving to kneel beside hers despite his injured arm. "Listen to me, Felicity. Out here, a person is judged by their actions, not society's whispers. You've proven yourself a woman of intelligence, character, and remarkable strength. Whatever happened in Boston belongs to the past." Tentatively, he took her hand in his. "I'm asking you to consider a future with me. If your feelings don't match mine, I'll never mention this again, and your position at the ranch will remain exactly as it is for as long as you wish it. But if there's any chance—" Felicity looked down at their joined hands, his tanned and calloused from years of ranch work. Hers paler, but no longer the soft hands of a Boston schoolteacher. The West had changed her, hardened her in some ways, but healed her in others. And this man before her, with his quiet strength and unexpected tenderness, had become more important to her than she had allowed herself to acknowledge. "My feelings," she began carefully, "are not what they should be between employer and employee. I've tried to maintain proper distance to remember my place." "Your place," he said with sudden fierceness, "is wherever you choose it to be. Beside me, I hope, but the choice must be yours, freely made." The conviction in his voice broke through the last of her hesitation. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "yes, Luke, I would be honored to be your wife." Joy transformed his face, erasing the lines of pain and weariness. With his good arm, he drew her toward him, his lips finding hers in a kiss that began gently but deepened as she responded. Felicity felt herself melting into him, years of carefully maintained propriety giving way to genuine passion. When they finally parted, both breathless, Luke pressed his forehead to hers. "I've wanted to do that since the day you arrived at the ranch," he confessed, standing on my porch in that blue dress, looking so brave and determined. Felicity laughed softly. "And I've wanted you to, though I would never have admitted it, even to myself." They remained close, talking softly of plans and possibilities, until the sound of Widow Johnson returning reminded them of propriety. The older woman took one look at their flushed faces and clasped hands and smiled knowingly, but said nothing beyond a cheerful good night. In the privacy of the small bedroom, Felicity hugged herself, hardly able to believe the turn her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had arrived in Sweetwater Creek, disgraced and desperate, certain that happiness was forever beyond her reach. Now, she had found not just security, but love, with a man whose strength was matched by his kindness. They returned to the Double F the following day, arriving to find Hank and the ranch hands anxiously awaiting their boss's return. The news of their engagement spread quickly, generating surprise congratulations from the men and delighted approval from Mrs. Delaney. "I knew it," the housekeeper declared, embracing Felicity. "From the moment he lifted you off that kitchen floor. The look in his eyes pure love, plain as day." Felicity blushed, remembering the moment that had, in retrospect, changed everything between them. Was I the only one who didn't see it? "Men are often clearer on these matters than we give them credit for," Mrs. Delaney said wisely. "They may not speak of feelings readily, but when they know their hearts, they know them completely." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Luke's arm healed steadily, allowing him to gradually resume his duties around the ranch, though Felicity insisted he continue delegating the more strenuous tasks to Hank and the other hands. Together, they managed the fall roundup, Felicity proving surprisingly adept at the business end of cattle ranching. With Luke's encouragement, she also began teaching reading and arithmetic to the ranch hands 3 evenings a week. Several of the younger cowboys showed genuine aptitude, their eagerness to learn touching her teacher's heart. "You've given them something beyond wages," Luke observed after one lesson. "Hope for bettering themselves. That's a rare gift." They agreed to marry before winter set in, giving them just enough time to prepare. Luke insisted on building an addition to the house, a proper study for Felicity, adjacent to the main bedroom, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a large window overlooking the mountains. "Every teacher needs a classroom," he said when she protested the extravagance. "Even if your only regular student will be me." Word of their engagement reached town, generating a flurry of visitors to the ranch. Some came from genuine goodwill, others from curiosity about the Boston schoolteacher who had captured the territory's most eligible rancher. Felicity received them all with the grace she had learned in her former life, gradually winning over even the most skeptical of Sweetwater Creek's matrons. Mrs. Harper arrived one afternoon, bearing a package wrapped in brown paper. "Your cousin sent this when I wrote to her of your engagement," she explained. "She said you might want it for your wedding." Inside, Felicity found her mother's wedding dress, ivory silk with delicate lace trim, carefully preserved all these years. A note from her cousin expressed joy at her happiness and regret that family circumstances prevented her traveling for the ceremony. "It's beautiful," Luke said when she showed him the dress that evening, "though not half as beautiful as the woman who'll wear it." She smiled at the compliment, still sometimes surprised by his open admiration. "My mother would have liked you, I think. She valued honesty above social position, a radical notion in Boston society." "And your father?" Felicity's smile faded slightly. "He hasn't responded to my letter about our engagement. I don't expect he will." Luke's arm tightened around her shoulders. "His loss, then." "But the offer stands if you want to postpone the wedding. Give him time to come around." "No," she said firmly. "My life is here now, with you. I won't let ghosts from the past delay our future." The wedding took place on a crisp October day, with the aspen trees blazing gold against the blue Wyoming sky. The entire ranch turned out for the occasion, joined by most of Sweetwater Creek's residents. The ceremony itself was simple, performed by a circuit-riding preacher in front of the ranch house, with Hank standing as Luke's best man and Mrs. Delaney as Felicity's matron of honor. Felicity wore her mother's dress, altered slightly by the town dressmaker, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Luke, freshly barbered and in a new suit ordered from Denver, watched her approach with an expression of such naked adoration that she nearly faltered in her steps. "You are the most beautiful sight I have ever beheld," he whispered as she reached him. Their vows were traditional, but spoken with personal conviction. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Luke kissed her with a restrained passion that nevertheless drew whoops and hollers from the assembled ranch hands. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with a feast prepared by Mrs. Delaney and her helpers, music provided by two cowboys with fiddles, and enough whiskey to ensure high spirits all around. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit in the yard, creating a magical glow as couples danced on the packed earth. "Happy, Mrs. Forrester?" Luke asked as they swayed together under the stars. "Completely," she answered, resting her head against his chest. "Though I still can't quite believe it's real." "Believe it." His arms tightened around her. "This is just the beginning." Later, when the last guests had departed or bedded down in the bunkhouse, Luke carried Felicity across the threshold of their home now in truth as well as feeling. The main bedroom had been transformed for the occasion, with fresh linens, flickering candles, and a small vase of late-blooming wildflowers on the dresser. If Felicity had harbored any nervousness about the wedding night, Luke's gentle consideration soon dispelled it. He was a patient lover, attentive to her responses and careful of her inexperience. What began in tender exploration culminated in a passion that surprised them both, leaving them breathless and marveling at the depth of their connection. "I never imagined it could be like this," Felicity confessed afterward, nestled against his side. Luke kissed her forehead, his voice husky with emotion. "Nor I. You've transformed everything, Felicity. My home, my life, my heart." The days following the wedding established a new rhythm for the ranch. Felicity continued managing the household and accounts, but now as mistress rather than employee. The hands treated her with a mixture of respect and protective affection, especially after Luke announced at breakfast one morning, with barely contained pride, that they would need to prepare a nursery by spring. "A baby," Felicity whispered that night as they lay together, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "The first of many, I hope," Luke replied, his expression so tender it brought tears to her eyes. "This house was built for a family. It's waited long enough." Winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in snow and confining activity to essential chores. Felicity found she enjoyed the enforced intimacy, spending long evenings reading aloud with Luke or teaching him to play chess by the fire. On clear days, they ventured out together to check on the nearest pastures, Luke insisting she learn to ride properly despite her condition. "A rancher's wife needs to know the land as well as he does," he explained, helping her mount the gentle mare he had selected for her, "especially when that wife is as capable as mine." As her pregnancy progressed, Felicity began preparing in earnest for the baby's arrival. Mrs. Delaney taught her to knit tiny garments, while Luke surprised her by crafting a cradle from cottonwood, its design simple but elegant. "My father made one for each of his children," he explained as he sanded the smooth curves. "It seems right to continue the tradition." Spring brought renewed activity to the ranch. Calving season kept Luke and the hands busy day and night, while Felicity's advancing pregnancy limited her mobility, but not her determination to fulfill her duties. Luke frequently found her balanced on a chair to reach high shelves or insisting on helping with the garden, despite his protests. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever known," he declared, after finding her supervising the spring cleaning, despite the doctor's advice to rest. "You knew that when you married me," she retorted, though she allowed him to guide her to a comfortable chair. "I can't simply sit idle while there's work to be done." His expression softened as he knelt beside her. "The most important work you're doing is right here," he said, placing his hand on her rounded belly. As if in response, the baby kicked vigorously against his palm. "Strong, like its father," Felicity observed, covering his hand with her own. "Determined, like its mother," he countered, kissing her tenderly. Their son arrived on a warm May morning, after a difficult but ultimately uncomplicated labor. Luke, who had refused to leave Felicity's side despite tradition dictating that birthing was women's business, wept unashamedly when the doctor placed the squalling infant in his arms. "He's perfect," he whispered, carefully transferring the baby to Felicity's waiting embrace, just like his mother. They named him William Henry Forrester, after both their fathers, a peace offering of sorts to the man who had yet to acknowledge his daughter's marriage. The boy thrived in the clear Wyoming air, growing strong under the adoring eyes of not just his parents, but the entire ranch, where he became something of a mascot to the hands. As summer waned into another autumn, Felicity sat on the porch one evening, nursing William, while watching Luke return from the pastures. Dust coated his clothes and hat, evidence of a long day's work, yet his face brightened visibly at the sight of his wife and son waiting for him. "My two favorite people," he said, climbing the steps to join them. After washing up at the basin Felicity had prepared, he settled beside her, one arm around her shoulders while the other hand gently stroked his son's downy head. "A letter came today," Felicity said after a comfortable silence. "From Boston." Luke's hand stilled. "Your father?" She nodded. "He's coming west, to meet his grandson and to see me. How do you feel about that?" Luke's voice was carefully neutral, but she could sense his concern. Nervous, hopeful. She looked down at William, now sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Mostly grateful that I don't need his approval anymore. I have everything I could want right here." Luke's arm tightened around her. "When I lifted you off that kitchen floor last year, I never imagined how completely you would change my life." "You changed mine first," she reminded him. "You gave me a home when I had none, respect when I thought I'd lost it forever, and love when I least expected it." As the sun set over the mountains, casting golden light across the prosperous ranch they had built together, Luke kissed his wife with the same tender passion that had marked their first embrace. "And I'll spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret it." Felicity leaned into him, their son nestled between them. From Boston society to Wyoming Territory, from disgraced school teacher to beloved ranch mistress, her journey had been neither simple nor easy. But here, in the home and family she had found with Luke Forrester, She had discovered a happiness deeper and more genuine than anything she had ever imagined possible. "No regrets," she whispered against his lips. "Only gratitude for the day you lifted me up and showed me where I truly belonged."